All right. Hello, everyone, and good evening. It is Tuesday, and I am so excited that you are tuned in to this week's episode of Tuesdays with Tamika. I am Tamika Walker Kelly, your favorite music teacher and the president of the North Carolina Association of Educators, NCAE. And on this edition of Tuesdays with Tamika, we're a little bit early today, so we're not 6 o'clock. But I am super excited and pleased to have our former Chief Justice, Cheri Beasley, our NCAE endorsed candidate for North Carolina's open U.S. Senate seat. So I'm going to bring her up. Here she is. Uh, would you like to say hello to the people, Cheri?
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with Tamika on Tuesday and really excited about this election cycle and look forward to having a conversation with you.
Excellent, excellent. We are so glad to have you here on our show and also just have you as our NCAE endorsed candidate. And we're excited for our members and the people watching to get to know more about you. So when our members hear your bio, they don't automatically think of your support for public education. So I wanted to have you on today so that you can talk about to NCAE members and educators across the state why public education is important to you. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background and then share why is public education important to you?
Sure. And I'm very thankful for the NCAE endorsement and really commend educators for all of the work you do all of the time. And as you're coming through this pandemic, really keeping our kids in a place where they're learning and growing and thriving. I have been a judge. I've been a public defender. I've been the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And I've always been very active in our schools. I go, depending on the age of the child, either story time. I've had lots of classes and students coming to court to really see what court looks like and what a judge does or what a lawyer does. And as Chief Justice, even then, I spent every Friday morning at a particular school in Raleigh, and I was supposed to be reading to first graders, but really these first graders were reading to me. And it was just such a wonderful way to see their minds working and growing and thriving. And it was an awesome experience. They were just fantastic children. So, children are really our future. And I know that you all have not just seen, but you know about these most recent end of year scores and how so many of our young people really have struggled. Well, in my mind, the next senator from North Carolina ought to be taking that to heart and should be fully committed, and I am, to making sure that the Senate is investing in our children and in our educators and our schools, and to make sure that our parents are successful in making sure that these children are not left behind, but that they have the resources that they need, regardless of zip code, to be able to learn and to grow.
That's amazing. And we always know as educators that we need more resources in our schools to support both the work we do as educators, but ultimately supporting our students and our families. And it's good to have candidates that recognize that we do need those things. And tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from and how you ended up here at this point in your campaign.
Well, I am Cheri Beasley, and I am wife to Curtis, and we are the very proud parents of twin sons who are 21 years old. And, I've been in public service for nearly 30 years. And after my service as Chief Justice, I thought about how I'd been in court every single day. And I knew, number one, that people don't come to court on their best days, and there's a problem in their lives or in their families' lives. And I also knew and know how Washington has failed families in North Carolina, and I know it's time for that to change. As I travel to all of our 100 counties, people are tired of the pettiness of partisan politics and really want to know that stuff's going to get done. And so in my mind, the next senator needs to be fighting hard to lower costs. People are feeling everything from pain at the pump to the cost of prescription drugs and everything in between. And so many of the families of the students that you're teaching every single day are making choices around buying groceries or school supplies or high price medicine. And so we must do better. And the Senate really can do something about rising costs, high priced medications. And I just know that my opponent has been in Congress for 6 years. He's had every opportunity to work on those things. And for every opportunity he's had to vote for North Carolina, and this is Ted Budd, he's voted against us. So we need a fighter for our children, for our families, and for our communities. And while we're here to talk about the U.S. Senate race, I also know that it is so important that our educators have the compensation that you deserve. And I do hope that the General Assembly and that you're electing folks, that we're all electing folks who believe in educators and the work that you do and the commitment and sacrifice you make every single day, and give you better compensation for the ways in which you invest and pour into our children every single day.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us and also highlighting the fact that there are many races on our ballots this season and that we should be paying attention to our federal races, but all the way down to your local races as well. Now, some of us understand the role of the different levels of government, local, state, and federal, and how they play a role in public education policy and funding, but it is a little confusing and can be a little complex. So, as our next U.S. Senator from North Carolina, because we do like to speak things into existence, can you explain what your role would be in public education policy and funding once you take that oath of office? Or just making it easier, how are you going to advocate for us as educators, as bus drivers, as custodians, as classroom teachers when you get to the U.S. Senate?
You know, so much of that really does happen with the General Assembly and with the local boards of education. But it is important for the Senate to work with the Department of Education, the National Department of Education, and Secretary of Education to make sure that national standards are where they need to be, but to also to provide funding. I mean, we have just come out of a pandemic, and we are still feeling the impact of that. And as you well know, and so many of your members know, that so many of our children did not have access to broadband or technology, and a lot of our teachers didn't either. And so when you think about the many losses, and when I look at these test scores, and you're a better observer and determinator of what these test scores really mean for our children. But what I do know is that we cannot leave these children behind. We've got to make sure that they have the resources. The Senate has an obligation to fund, and there are a whole lot of federal regulations around schools and education. And I know the Senate has an obligation because it's important for us to vote our values and to spend our values. And so I am very much going to be fighting for funding for our schools and for our educators. I also know that educators need opportunities for advanced training, and a host of other ways in which we should be supporting. But funding is key, and every child, regardless of zip code, deserves to have adequate funding and resources and supplies to be able to learn and to grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for highlighting that there is a portion of federal funding that comes to our state and supports our public school students and educators. And so it is good to have someone with knowledge of that so that when you go to the Senate, because you're going to go to the Senate, when you go to the Senate, we'll have someone fighting to make sure that we have adequate federal funding for programs like IDEA, for making sure that we have Title I funding, making
Mm.
sure Title IX is nice and strong and fair and equitable for students. So yes, that's great news. So I told you it would go by really fast and it would be kind of quick, but we are coming up on our time together already. But I have a question, and it's one that I ask all of the guests who are on the show, and it is probably the most important question we ask. It is 1 week. We have 1 week until election day. And so, what is your voting plan? Did you vote by mail? Did you do voting early? Or are you waiting until election day?
I voted early with my husband and one of our twin sons. We voted on the first day of voting, and it was an awesome day. There were lots of supporters who went to the poll with us, and they also voted. But it is important to make a plan to vote. And while we do have early voting through November 5th in North Carolina, where folks can register and vote on the same day or make changes to the registration, and hope folks will do that, and then you can't do that. You can only vote on November the 8th. But it is important to make a plan because time gets by, you get busy and all that. So please make a plan to vote today. But I would also ask people to go to cheribeasley.com for more information about my candidacy. We have 6 days, y'all. That's all we really need. It is so incumbent upon all of us to make sure we are telling folks about the importance of the entire ballot, so that the people that we elect share our values for our families, our homes, our communities, and our children's future. So I'm excited about the next 6 days. We're going to stand together. We're going to fight hard, and we're going to win these good elections so that our kids and our educators are being supported in the ways that they should be.
Excellent, excellent. So, as you know, as you heard Cheri Beasley say, she went and voted on the first day of early voting, which was October 20th. So, if you are watching on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, it is your turn to let us know what is your voting plan, because whichever route that you choose, you hear me say this every Tuesday, we want you to make sure that you know all of your choices in order to cast your vote and use your voice in this election. So voting by mail has already started, and the deadline to make sure that you get your ballot in is I think it's today, but I'm not sure, but wanted to make sure. But early voting runs until November the 5th, and then of course you can go and vote on election day on Tuesday, November 8th at your polling location. And if you want to know all of our pro public education endorsements before you go to vote, if you haven't done so already, you can go to NCAE Votes 2022.org and check them out. And you will see Cheri Beasley along with our other NCAE endorsed candidates. So that is all the time that we have today. I want to thank Cheri Beasley, our NCAE endorsed candidate for North Carolina's open U.S. Senate seat, for her time today. Is there any last things that you want to share with our audience today?
I just want to say, so today is the last day to request your mail-in ballot.
Okay.
Do that, and then get it in. But also, y'all, it's so important that all of us talk to the people around us about voting. We have folks in our faith groups, the people we work with, and civic groups. Talk to folks about who you're voting for and why. Encourage people to vote. It is so important that we elect folks who share our values. I'm excited about the work that we will do together on the other side of this election. And we can do this as long as we stay focused and not get distracted. We want leaders who will unite us and not divide us, and we're going to win all of these races up and down the ballot. So thank you all so much for all you do every single day for our families, our children, our communities, and for North Carolina.
Thank you. No problem.
Thank you, Tamika.
Thank you, Cheri Beasley, for being on Tuesdays with Tamika. And as always, thank you to everyone for tuning in to today's episode. As you know, we will continue to do these. I want you to stay tuned for another special episode of Tuesdays with Tamika to round out our election season. And also make sure, if you have a friend or a friend of a friend and they have not yet made a plan to vote, you can share this video with them on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter and remind them to go out and vote. Well, thank you all so much for your time today, and we will see you next Tuesday. Have a great one. Bye-bye.